Hello, MAGFest!
Wait, can you guys do that again? I want a picture of the MAGFest crowd. Awesome!
Thank you. All right, we are here to present Gay Space Rocks.
That's a loud crowd. That's not what I'm used to. I'm not used to echoing this much either. Y'all are MAGFest people. You're supposed to be loud, right? Yeah.
So we're going to start this off introducing ourselves. My name is Natalie. I am a teacher and independent illustrator. I am a demi bi, mostly cis lady. And this is my wonderful wife.
Short disclaimer, I have a little bit of allergy-induced asthma, so I might start wildly coughing at any moment. In that case, I'm going to turn away so you don't have to hear that, and my beautiful, eloquent wife will take over talking.
Awkwardly.
Awkwardly. I apologize in advance. But my name is Judith. I'm an animator by trade and a complete dork by all other titles, as well as a huge lesbian. Boy, that didn't used to get cheers. I also consider myself mostly cis, and if I went into explaining what that means, it would take a really long time. And
we don't have that time because
we
we're
want
here
to talk about
Gay
cartoons.
Space Rocks.
Yeah.
But one reason we talk, also, we're white. We're American. We've only been abroad twice. And basically why we're saying some of those obvious and non-obvious things is that we have a limited perspective. Even for somebody who has all those same check boxes as me, they may not have the same opinions or experiences in other areas. We are not monolithic opinions. While we have friends all across the LGBT plus spectrum, and we've talked to them, we've done lots of reading, we still cannot 100% speak for anybody but ourselves. On top of that, we cannot force our friends to come up and get over stage fright and present with us. So if we mess up, we're sorry. We're always eager to learn more. We take comments at the end of the panel if we have time. You can follow us out of the panel to a certain point. Don't come into our hotel room.
Yeah, don't follow us back to our rooms. And we should be good.
All right, so.
Who here loves Steven Universe? I don't know if it's the people or the acoustics.
It's both.
It's pretty amazing.
I think it's both, because I've never been this loud at a panel before.
And if you're comfortable raising your hand to this question, who considers themselves part of the LGBT plus spectrum? If you're not, you're still welcome here. Please don't feel called out. And I like to ask this one too. Who here kind of relates to any particular Steven Universe character at all? Yeah. Very good. It's okay if you don't do that either. Or is it? No. So, move on.
We're going to start off with some quotes by Rebecca Sugar because I feel they are poignant to the thesis of our panel. I really want to dedicate the show, to anyone who's ever felt, for whatever reason, like an alien walking around among real people.
Second quote, and these are just pieces of quotes. You can't wait until kids have grown up to let them know that queer people exist.
I've mentioned that I'm a teacher. I mostly work with adults with disabilities, but one day a week I get to work in my actual degree of K-12. Like we go and volunteer and do art classes at schools that don't have art teachers. And thanks. Thank you. At any rate, I noticed this sort of very sudden divide, like the preschoolers, the kindergartners, the first graders. Like if I mention my wife, a lot of them are like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Because they're learning everything for the first time. The world is what it is. If they see something, it exists, they accept it, they're fine with it. But by the time they're in second and third grade, at that point, at least half the kids are gonna be like, you're what? And it's a learning moment. Sometimes it's an unlearning moment. Kids who have already internalized bigotry. It happens young. And so that means that there are queer kids who are internalizing bigotry, that don't know they're queer yet and will find out later and have a hard time of it. There are kids who are going to be end up becoming bullies when they didn't have to end up being bullies. It makes a big deal to be able to see people like you, even if you don't know that's you yet.
Yeah. Something I always like to say to people is that we identify ourselves. We come to realize our identities by watching media. We're Americans, we have TV. It's just a thing that we do. Or through reading books, characters that we like. We discover ourselves by discovering characters who remind us of ourselves or what we want to be.
There was this one little girl, a second grader in the class that I had just this week, and I did a lesson that involved the new Spider-Man movie, because of course. And she was pointing to Miles Morales instead of Gwen, being like, I want to be him. And then her classmates were like, nah, you're a girl. And she was like, but I want to be him. But at the same time, she's one of the kids that was the most like, you have a wife? So she's got some kind of tomboy leanings, but at the same time, she's already internalizing some of that box.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, part of the reason why gender identity or LGBT issues are overlooked in these things is because children's media completely fails LGBT kids on this front. It doesn't give us characters to look up to or identify with, not on that level. And we're finally starting to see a change, and Steven Universe is leading the charge in that change. Remember that the main demographic for almost all kids shows, unless they're My Little Pony, which is good now, apparently.
We're not talking about the fandom, we're talking about the content.
Yeah. Main demographic, the one that all the big wigs consider to be the most profitable, is little boys, because everybody be sexist, sorry. And Steven Universe probably wouldn't have gotten on air if its main character wasn't a boy.
Or at least presents as a boy.
Mm-hmm. And this is one of the reasons why we have to listen to the creator's words. Because in this case, I know a lot of people will say once the creation is out there, the author's words don't matter. But in this case, they really do. Because there's no debating that this show is for queer kids. It's for LGBT people. It's for not just kids, but adults, because we all missed out on this kind of stuff. This is the first kids show to represent us at this level. And now we're going to go into detail about that representation and how you can find it in every corner of this show. In some places you might not have recognized or realized. We're going to go into the themes of the show, the characters, and their relationships, because relationships are very important. And they're becoming even more important as the show goes on. Also, spoilers are going to happen. I hope y'all are caught up or don't care.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking like the episode that just aired this week, spoilers, okay?
We're good.
Okay, so one of the first important themes is feeling alien. That's a silly picture for feeling alien. That's a more serious one.
It's a pretty common topic. Fitting in is one of the main Monster of the Week plot themes in almost every Saturday morning cartoon that we saw growing up. And, that's pretty par for the course, but that's usually solved by, it turns out all the popular kids recognize that there's actually something cool about the thing that made you weird. Mm-hmm. But in this show, it's not necessarily that you get external validation. Sometimes it's just you are weird and that's fine from the get-go, or you are weird and your other weird people are also cool with you, and that's cool.
Because when we're talking about being accepted by the mainstream or blending in with the mainstream, that's something LGBT plus people just can't ever do unless we're hiding ourselves, and that's not what this is about.
It's more about loving yourself as who you are.
It's about celebrating yourself as an individual, finding other people who will celebrate you without you needing to prove yourself to them.
And this is explored in very heavy-handed metaphorical ways of like there's literal aliens on Earth and they're literally outcast from their home world.
They're aliens who are alienated by the aliens from the alien world that they came from.
Alien.
Yes, that's the joke. That's the joke. You got it.
But I liked it.
I know. Oh, thanks.
And then there's more like the one that we showed just here, where Stevani is feeling like they're being put in a very alien situation, or like everybody's looking at them all of a sudden. And that is also extremely relatable to the LGBT community.
Yeah, this whole explanation of feeling like you don't belong in the greater group is an inherently queer exploration. It's something that most people who are marginalized do experience. It's something that all of us in this group experience.
Non-traditional family.
Stephen has 3 moms.
Aunts.
Sisters.
Guardians.
Guardians. Family.
Stephen has 3 female guardian role model family members, a dad who's very present in his life, yet does not live on site.
And is very supportive.
And is his mother?
I mean, Stephen is his mother.
Yes.
I don't think many people have that problem in real life, but...
No. No.
We'll take questions at the end.
Yes.
Don't wear out your arm.
We don't take any questions during the panel because we are trying so hard to fit this within the hour and a half.
There's so much to talk about.
But if we have any extra time at the end, we open the comments.
So it's not just the crystal gems who form a non-traditional family, and that's absolutely what they are, but even the human residents of Beach City all seem to have something non-traditional about them.
The most nuclear family is Lars's.
And look at Lars.
Now Lars is a zombie, so that's all scratched to hell.
There's the Fry family. They're missing a mother, and they have Ronaldo as a son. The Pizza family is also missing a mother. They have a father, a grandmother, and 2 daughters. The Sour Creams family there's a child that was born out of wedlock there, and a step-parent thing going on.
An onion.
An onion, yes. And even Connie's family. I mean, they are probably the most nuclear.
Yeah, but there's a sort of reversal in expected gender roles where Connie's mom is the big job, and Connie's dad is more of like I do something on the side.
Me too.
I'm gonna drive you there.
I'm cool too, just like
But
Mom.
that's wonderful.
Yep.
It's wonderful to see a dad that's in a more supportive role and a mom who's the working mom.
The important thing here is representation, is getting to see that those kinds of families exist out in the world and can be treated normally just like every other kind of family. I'm a child who came from a divorced family. Every cartoon I ever saw, that both parents were either happily together or one had tragically died. And yeah, it makes you feel like a weirdo, right? Like, what did I do wrong?
Well, when you're LGBT, your family is going to, by default, be extremely non-traditional because...
Whether they like it or not.
Yes. Half the time, you're going to be ousted from the family you were born into. If not fully, at least there's like an emotional rift. I have a pretty significant emotional rift that I'm slowly filling with sand over the last 14 years. But there are folks who get straight up disowned. And even when you are an LGBT person who has a really amazing supportive family and you struck gold, you got really lucky, when you go out and decide to build your life, you're going to have a non-traditional family. Whether you're ace and you're just going to have a family of friends, or whether you're very visibly queerly paired like we are. And then when we have a kid, our kid is going to have a non-traditional family that'll look a lot like Stephen's.
Yep. Another important thing that is very important to us on the LGBT plus spectrum is the idea of found family. People who aren't related by blood but find each other and choose each other as family, whether it be a group of close friends or just people who have something like being cast out and having nothing in common with the rest of their group in common with each other. This is something that a lot of queer people who are cast out from their traditional families wind up having to form. And this is the main family in our story. This is treated as the most valid, but every family, no matter what it appears as, even the diamonds in this story, is not treated as less valid.
And like Garnet makes it very clear in a more recent episode, like, we don't really have family things until now. And basically saying we are a family, we are a found family. It was wonderful, I cried.
Okay, individualism versus conformity.
Okay, here is another cultural disclaimer. There are cultures that can emphasize the community. You do it for the team. You conform for the better of everybody. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, even if it's different from what we're used to. The thing that will always happen to an LGBT person, though, is they can't help but stick out. They can't help but be different. And in a society, for better or for worse, that does that, it's often for worse for the LGBTQ members of that society.
Yeah, and the United States claims to have a very individualist society, and yes, we often embody all the worst qualities of an individualist society, but we're also very, very conformist, and we love it when people conform, and you've probably all felt the sting of that at some point or another. So, the greatest illustration of this point in Steven Universe is Homeworld versus Earth, and the episode The Answer gave that in an even more easy to read allegory, with every Homeworld gem being a monochrome color and everything exploding into lush full color once the characters entered the realm of Earth.
So, I love color symbolism, y'all.
I know, baby. So then what does all that mean, huh? Well, what is Homeworld?
Well, Homeworld is a very conformist society, a society that has taken conformity to an extremely stifling and toxic level.
With a caste system and everything.
Yes, and they keep trying to make everything identical within its particular type, but these differences just keep popping out. Like even the Ruby Squad, they have distinct personalities, they've got variations in, their shades, their outfits.
Even one of the members of the cast, when he was on the official Steven Universe podcast, said that they probably act a little more uniform when they're in front of their superiors than they do when they're off on a mission together, because they're hiding the fact that they have individual personalities, because this is something, being different, that you cannot stamp out.
That has been especially highlighted in the most recent Ball episode, where gems that we see obviously have personalities they're hiding, are acting as uniform as possible. These recited stiff dances, these standing in rows to try and seem as identical as possible. They are hammering that down right now, how toxically conformist Homeworld is. Yeah.
Steven Universe isn't exactly about good versus evil. There aren't any real evil characters except Ronaldo, but...
he learned a little bit with his Vernal Flits.
It's more about thinking...
Bloodstone learned something.
Bloodstone did learn something, you're right. It's more about thinking outside of societal expectations or purposes and loving and expressing yourself with freedom and honesty.
It's not to say that Homeworld isn't committing immensely evil acts, but one of the theses of the creators is that this is not going to be a good versus evil, cackling, maleficent kind of thing, but extremely flawed characters who have done horrible things thinking they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, like in Avatar or Princess Mononoke or any of those other things that everybody loves. Okay, so sort of in tune with that theme is the way things were supposed to be, with big, fat air quotes around supposed.
Anybody who's ever been to see a professional counselor, it's awesome. One of the things you're first going to hear from your counselor is, don't say should.
Don't say supposed to.
Don't say should have. Don't say, well, I need to be blah for somebody else's expectations. You don't.
No. Setting up expectations like that for yourself is just a way to torture yourself mentally and emotionally, something I've gotten very good at and I'm currently unlearning. And should have or supposed to are like keywords to that. And there's a lot of those beliefs in these characters, and there's a lot of those beliefs in people who are first coming to the realization that they're queer. This is not how I was supposed to be. This isn't how my mom thought I was supposed to be.
And you gradually start learning to replace those with, I would like to. I need to. I think it would be healthy for me to. You start exploring those phrases and where they lead you instead.
Let's go into detail, though. Let's say Pearl was supposed to be a servant, pretty much, for the rest of her life. And then after that, after she rebelled, she was supposed to be by Rose's side forever. And that didn't work out.
And she's doing a great job coming to terms with both those things now. I love her arc. We'll talk about that soon.
Yes. Amethyst was supposed to be big, And supposed to be a soldier.
And was supposed to come out 500 years earlier.
But she's a tiny ex-wrestler instead.
Garnet was never supposed to exist.
Ruby and Sapphire were supposed to stay in their casts and never fuse.
Oh, and Pink Diamond was never supposed to rebel, take on the identity of Rose Quartz and dead name Pink Diamond, and was also never supposed to turn into a little boy.
And all of us were supposed to be straight and monogamously married and have 2.5 children. I still don't know what that means. And a white picket
mortgage.
Fence. And be financially successful.
And no college debt.
Nailed it. Even Stephen himself becomes obsessed for a period of time with what he was supposed to do, what his mother created him for. And that drives him insane. It makes him depressed.
Nobody was telling him, you're supposed to be this. Everybody was trying to keep it as open-ended as possible.
But they still couldn't help but imply certain things, and he internalized
help but
it.
Talk about how great his mom was, and he internalized, well, if my mom was great and I'm a product of her, I need to try and be like that. Kids are going to draw these connections that you're not trying to make for them.
Yeah, even the term magical destiny, which the first time Connie used it was really funny, became this toxic phrase that Stephen used over and over again to imply that he was destined for something great, that his mother made up some reason for him to be. And it wasn't until he talked to his incredibly awesome father who told him, no, just exist. That's literally all she wanted, that he finally embraced that. Something that it takes most of us 30 or more years to do. Swipe. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of Stephen.
We're going into the characters now, starting with the main character.
Raised by three powerful female-coded characters.
If I could update this, I would have him in the Pink Diamond outfit.
But unfortunately, we did not have access to our editing software.
Been very busy.
When that aired. But yeah, presents as male in general, but has motifs and powers that are generally associated with femininity.
Almost all of his role models are female presenting, not actually female, but you know, enough.
Non-binary women was the term that Rebecca Sugar used.
There we go.
Both to identify the gems as well as herself.
His powers are completely empathetic. He is covered in the color pink, and his weapon is a shield. He's
also just totally stoked to become a non-binary entity with his best friend, Connie. Stevani has canon they-them pronouns. Stevani has a more feminine-presenting voice and appearance, and Stephen has no problems with that.
Yeah, what we're getting to with all of this is saying that Steven Universe is a young boy who's completely free of toxic masculinity and traditional gender confines. Completely free as a pink butterfly.
Which is an amazing thing for any AMAB person to see. To see something more free, to see, oh, I don't have to operate within this narrow box. And not learning toxic masculinity often means not learning sexism.
Yeah, and not portraying toxic masculinity in this cartoon at all is a great example to set for the kids who are watching it. Because they start picking up those ideas real fast, let me tell you.
Stephen also exists sort of in between a binary. There are gems and there are humans, and then there's Stephen. Stephen is both and neither at the same time. Stephen is completely new. Stephen is not somebody that either humans nor gems can completely guide because they don't know what to do with him.
Even the people who really care the most and are trying their best to raise him are often lost and confused.
And we're not trying to imply that non-binary identities are new. They've gone back for a long time. But it's an idea that's resurfacing in our society. And so it feels new to a lot of people who are in guardian positions, and even if they want to be supportive. And that can leave both the supportive guardians and the non-binary person figuring themselves out in a bit of a lurch.
This is certainly one of the first times that a main character in a kid's cartoon does anything to speak to the non-binary experience or struggles, even if it is a largely symbolic one. So Stephen can be seen as a perfect role model for any kid who might be going through that kind of thing.
I do still like how they double down the non-binary with Stevani.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's
Anyone
not just
who says
symbolic.
that they, them isn't their pronouns is full of it. And even though there are a lot of challenges to understanding him and raising him and figuring everything out that only seem to grow as more and more is uncovered, everybody still encourages him completely to be himself, to love himself, no matter what path he goes down.
Another thing that's really great about him is that he is so open to understanding, to trying to get to know what makes somebody tick and to supporting them no matter where they're coming from, that there is no doubt in any viewer's mind that Stephen would love and support you, the viewer.
Yeah.
How many heroes of cartoons do you think would absolutely, definitely be like, I'm going to make this thing work out for you. I'm going to support you. I think you're awesome.
How many kids who are picked on in school would imagine they're meeting their favorite character and think, yeah, they would definitely like me, when most of the people they meet in public don't like them? Stephen, you would have no doubt about. Keep going.
Did you mention the later part?
No.
Okay. The last thing we want to mention is that as he has taken on more and more tasks and responsibilities, both in terms of, leadership and emotional support and taking care of himself, he's more and more often people are asking him what he wants to do instead of telling him what to do. So we see him also really growing into a leadership position, even as he's learning to unpackage and get rid of the feeling like he has to take on his mom's shoes. The more he is unburdened by the idea that he has to replace his mom, the better job he gets at leading everyone else.
Yeah. All right, so is that like a let's go lesbians kind of thing?
Let's go lesbians.
Okay.
That's my wife.
Speaking of lesbians. Pearl is so gay. And how is Pearl somehow gayer than the actual pair of lesbians in a trench coat? We're about to tell you.
Well, let's talk about the obvious, the outward gayness.
Pearl.
She's had some very romantically charged scenes with rose quartz and flashbacks that have gotten her ass banned in Britain. She sings show tunes in a tux on a balcony in New York while throwing a rose up into the air.
She gets numbers.
There's a whole episode dedicated to her putting on a biker jacket, tight jeans, and chasing after a woman to get her number. My jaw was on the floor when I was watching that. We cannot ever take for granted that this is a kid's cartoon, and I had watched The Answer, I'd watched all the Ruby Sapphire stuff, and I was like, that is the gayest shit I've ever seen on a kid's. I can't believe I just watched that.
Like that episode was basically condensed lesbian culture.
It was, though. It was. So we can go into
But besides the outward, Pearl has even more lesbian experiences than Ruby and Sapphire do, because Ruby and Sapphire find each other and they just stay together, and that's great. But Pearl has experienced that first love and that first heartbreak, that first crushing, oh my God, what is my identity without this person? Will I ever find another gay person who I connect with, because there's so much fewer of us?
Because prior to this, Pearl had been kept in a very low status at Homeworld, basically trained from her creation to believe that her value depended on what service she could provide to another person. That usually doesn't happen to human beings, but again, as a metaphor, a lot of us wind up feeling that way.
So often when you're queer and you come out and you embrace that revolution, you lose the original, home and family that you had before. And you're thinking, well, it's worth it because I know who I am and I know who I am with this person and we're gay together, and then that relationship falls apart. You're like, what did I lose all of that for? Why did I do it? I have nothing now. She has that lesbian loneliness heartbreak experience that is so common to, you know, the LGBT community, but God, she's really very lesbian to me. She's
working through it, though.
She's working through it. She also has a sort of a transphobic analog in earlier part of her arc.
When she first sees Stevani, not anymore.
When she first sees Stevani, she has that sort of second wave lesbian feminist moment.
Yeah, unfused right now. I'm very uncomfortable with this.
It's inappropriate. And that's very, very second wave lesbian feminist. But I love that she shows that that kind of thing can be unlearned. You can become a revolutionary on another level to support the next generation, the next bit of progress.
The first rebellion isn't the only one. The first relationship isn't the only one. And getting a relationship isn't equivalent to self-actualization as a queer person.
So she's learning to self-actualize as a queer single person. And she doesn't need a relationship. She can gather numbers, and she can be interested in humans. Her being interested in a human is very similar to her getting over her metaphorical transphobia, because she was like, ugh, no, gems and humans don't mix.
Wait, they can come in that color?
And I'm just going to say she has a type, because she wouldn't have been interested in any human before, because she was sort of like gem-human relationship phobic. But now you can tell that she's really grown a lot. She's got a type. She imagined the original rose quartz design.
Yep.
She's got a
that
type,
was her
y'all.
OC. Yep.
She.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Because Amethyst deserves a turn.
Amethyst.
So we're talking a lot about Pearl like she's some kind of old lady, like the old guard of lesbian or gayness, and Amethyst is the new generation. Amethyst was created on Earth, not on Homeworld. She doesn't know anything about Homeworld. You okay?
Oh yeah, I'm just leaning forward too much, so I'm getting hot. Can I have my water?
Oh, yeah.
You wiggle your eyebrows at me.
She's the most out of all of them that's influenced by human culture. She's the most open to hanging out with humans. And from a queer perspective, Amethyst is incredibly fluid. Fluid, like water. That's an important word when we're thinking about Amethyst. That's something that Rebecca Sugar uses to describe her in the square, triangle, circle art thing. What's it called?
Right.
Tell my uncultured ass what it's called.
Kandinsky is
there we
this...
Go.
About 100 years ago, there was this Russian guy named Kandinsky.
Say it real fast, though.
And he was all like, I don't want to paint things, I want to paint emotions, I want to paint music. And I think that shapes and colors have this sort of emotional theory thing where yellow and triangles go together because they're really, really unbalanced and kind of dangerous and neurotic. And that's Pearl. I think that blue and circles to go together because they're really sort of fluid and stable and kind of go with the flow, and that's Amethyst. And then I think that red and squares go together because that feels really rock solid, like a brick house, and strong and dependable, and that's Garnet.
Brick house, huh?
Shades of brick house.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Amethyst also experiments with shape-shifting a lot. Yes?
We forgot to mention, Pearl represented codependence because she counted too much of her self-value on someone else. Amethyst is counterdependent because Amethyst...
Or she was.
Amethyst was counterdependent because instead of accepting help, she toxically pushed it away when she needed it.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get into that, but I was first talking about how she experiments with different gender forms, like Purple Puma. That's a male body. Everybody calls her he when she's in that form. She also has clearly experimented with Vidalia in her past.
Again, I'm an art major, I'm an art teacher, I teach art history, and there's no such thing as an artist that paints one person that many times that has not been intimate with their model. Didn't happen.
She's generally down for anything, and she exemplifies a lot of free and open practices which are associated with our LGBT plus culture. But she also has faced disapproval from pretty much all sides. The Crystal Gems being all prim and proper and kind of picking on every little thing that she did, knowing that Homeworld would disapprove of how she looked or acted.
And it makes sense that she would develop a counter-dependent streak, because not only does she feel like she's getting veins of disapproval from everything, but no one is really able to guide her, and no one thinks to guide her as much as she might need. Pearl doesn't realize how much...
Your P's are so strong.
Pearl. Pearl.
It's okay.
Doesn't realize how much Amethyst is internalizing the way she picks on her, and talks about the kindergarten. She associates herself with the kindergarten rather than thinking about how Pearl has that idea of separation between the two of them.
All of those feelings condense into a very deep and powerful self-hatred, which is something that plagues Amethyst deeply during the beginning half of the series.
And that can get to a lot of fluid people who have a hard time getting the guidance or seeing themselves represented. So I'm talking like bisexual, transsexual, no, I meant to say pansexual.
Pansexual, transgendered, you mean?
But yeah, I meant to say pansexual and then transgendered, and I spliced the two words because I'm very tired. I know that transsexual is a bad word, and I apologize.
Anyway, fluid people are often kind of treated badly by a lot of the other LGBT groups.
Yeah.
Like they don't belong to any one category, and they have a lot of nerve being fluid between categories. And I see a lot of that in Amethyst. I see a lot of the way she internalizes that in fluid people who I know in real life.
Yeah. A lot of our non-binary friends really relate to Amethyst.
Mm-hmm. So you can see her as an allegory for any fluid category, like Natalie said. And just as she is meant to be included under the Crystal Gems flag, so too is every fluid LGBT person, all of them.
And that's another reason why she and Steven relate to each other so much, because they're both in between these experiences, and they're both part of the new guard, the new generation that didn't grow up with the war and all that stuff.
And realizing that, dropping that counterdependence, and embracing Steven's friendship and his, I guess, brotherhood would be the word, because he's a little boy, that has helped her to start to overcome that self-hatred, to start to like who she is. And she's actually grown so much that basically during that big showdown with the diamonds, when everyone is battling their inner demons, all she can think is, don't get shattered, don't get shattered, don't get shattered, because she's got everything else figured out by that point.
And we keep seeing that reinforced, like with the Amethyst, or when she's just like, I guess I'm gonna wear these limb extensions.
She handled blue diamond picking on her size like a pro, not like old Amethyst would have. She's really worked hard to move past all those hang-ups, and that validation is so well earned. Ready? You guys like Garnet?
Garnet is our favorite asterisk. We're gonna get to
Garnet, Ruby, and Sapphire are separate characters. We're talking about Garnet.
Yes.
The others will come later.
So we're going to imply Ruby and Sapphire, but not really get into them until the end because reasons.
So Garnet is the embodiment of a loving, equal, queer relationship who is one of the main characters on a kid's cartoon. Once again, don't ever take that for granted. Ever.
But beyond that, if we think of Garnet as just Garnet, Garnet her own character, Garnet is the embodiment of an independent person who has self-love and self-acceptance. Also, an ace person. Garnet doesn't want a relationship.
Garnet, a crowd.
Garnet is happy with the love she has within herself and with having the friendship and and her family around her.
Yeah, everyone looks up to her. And that self-love that she embodies and exemplifies for the rest of them is something that's really important to exemplify for all queer people. It's something we struggle with. It's something we're not taught to do.
Nonetheless, she's still closeted herself from Steven for years. And I'm going to say, with kids, that's like the last ball to drop. as a teacher, I came out way later than in every other area of my life. I was out to all my friends, and then my family, and then new friends, and then eventually at work, and then the last thing was the kids. Because, am I going to be seen as child inappropriate?
Yeah, it's really hard to shake that idea that you're not appropriate for kids.
Or the idea that kids just won't understand. And Garnet had internalized that idea.
Of Stephen's life, she didn't tell him that she was a fusion, despite being so proud of that.
And it wasn't because Stephen really couldn't understand earlier, but that one moment of, Stephen's a baby, Stephen doesn't have object permanence. So
when Garnet unfuses in front of baby Stephen, he panics, and she doesn't understand why.
And then she thinks, I'm inappropriate for what Stephen is now. I can't tell him yet. And that makes her a bit more stiff, a bit more distant,
more
a
cagey.
bit less confident. She wasn't being entirely her full self, and that's why she was just really stoic and mysterious.
Well, she keeps that air of mystery about her on purpose. Come on.
Yeah, she
it
enjoyed it some.
Yeah,
but she also really felt like she had to be the leader in the vacuum of rose quartz. And when that starts to get unpackaged, her arc is a lot more gradual and subtle than the others.
Yeah, because she usually has it so together. She's not a mess like the other two.
But just because you have it fairly together doesn't mean you aren't carrying some of those old wounds and that they're not affecting your behavior in subtle ways and that you can't get even better at being more together and more self-actualized. Self-actualization is a lifelong process, not some end that you meet before the end. We're doing it constantly because we're always changing.
She is eventually forced to out herself in front of Stephen by being forcibly poofed and unfused in front of him. And when he finds out that she's a fusion, he's pretty thrilled about it. He thinks it's awesome. And that energy and happiness that gives her, that freedom to finally reveal this part of herself to Stephen, it just comes out in that song that she sings, which is totally a coming out song.
And from that moment on, she makes more jokes, she smiles more, she's more relaxed around everybody, and she keeps getting more and more and more relaxed and eventually starts sharing more and more vulnerabilities with Stephen. And that makes them closer.
I like to read a quote from Sugar herself about the song, just in case anybody doubts me. I'm always right? No, that's not true. That's really not true. Okay, but I'm right about this. We get to see what's going on with her, and the song is such an explosion of her celebration of herself, which is where her strength is coming from. We had always known that she was strong, but we didn't know why exactly. And once we could talk about why, we get a chance to explore that. She'd always been caring and had this deep, deep strength. That song, it was an exploration of the fact that she's a victory and a manifestation of love, and introducing that song to the show allows her to be able to express that openly. It's gay as hell.
A mention on the most recent arc, again, just from Garnet's perspective, not talking too much about Ruby and Sapphire yet. Garnet was seen as a pillar, a perfect example of what the revolution was fought for. She felt it was her obligation to keep it together, to remain as full of faith in Rose's vision as possible, and to lead everybody. When what she finds about a Rose shakes that, she falls apart, because suddenly it feels like, it's kind of like an even worse version of when you find out that your old fave who inspired you turns out to be like racist or something like that, and you're like, is everything that I was thinking wrong, or could this person have had a good idea? Or what Garnet eventually realizes that Rose was inspired by Garnet. Garnet was not a product of Rose. Garnet was not representing Rose's legacy, but Garnet was her own legacy and her own thing to explore, and it was Garnet's right to continue exploring instead of remaining the same, to continue evolving.
Maybe someday she'll ask questions. Go back and watch the series. She literally never asks a question, ever. She only demands that people give her answers.
She'll be like, tell me what you think.
And that's because Rose told her that one time, don't ever question this.
When she reframes her existence as her own choice, she is stronger than ever. Before, she was afraid of facing Blue without Rose there, but now she can march right up to her.
And Blue is her original oppressor, don't forget. That's a hard fight.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about this in more detail with Ruby and Sapphire, but now we're going to go on to the lovable Peridot.
Okay, you're not allowed to get that close to the mic when you say Peridot again.
I'm sorry, Peridot.
That's okay. I think it's your mic, because I'm real close
I don't think it's just my mic. I think it's also that I just talk in teacher voice, and so I naturally project.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So, when Peridot first arrives on Earth, well, more like when she's first captured and tied up with the child safety leash, she's a little bit problematic.
Now, we're not saying that Peridot is a problematic depiction of a character.
No.
But rather, we're saying...
She's a great depiction of a character.
She's a great depiction of somebody with a lot of internalized bigotry, who has learned how to be a bigot from the society she's in.
Yeah, she attempts to impose homeworld rules on the crystal gems over and over and over again, and mocks and belittles their relationships and customs.
She says a ton of offensive stuff and gets punched for it sometimes.
Right in her face.
Even
the people who love her liked watching her get hit there.
It was a little cathartic. But all of this comes from a place of ignorance. She literally knows nothing else. She hasn't had time to even think about anything else. She has had nothing but punishment if you don't do the thing, and reward if you do the thing that we want you to do.
Yeah.
And she took a lot of pride in doing the thing.
When she tells Amethyst that she's wrong, she has no idea she's going to offend her. She thinks that Amethyst is going to find it funny too. It's so hilarious how messed up you look, right? Let's laugh about it together. Rebecca Sugar grew up Jewish and said that part of Peridot's behavior was based on the way Christian kids would talk to her about her customs and holidays. I also grew up Jewish, and that is so absolutely true. I'm not going to say that word. I'm not going to do it. But yeah, again, those are children. They don't know any better. They're acting like jerks because they're modeling what they've seen other people do. Peridot is kind of the same way, just like a several 100-year-old child.
Now, one of the things that I really like about the Peridot arc is that I'm not just examining Peridot, but I'm examining the several different ways that our heroes handle Peridot's problematic behavior. It's sort of something that we can model after. We have this sort of culture of immediate outrage sometimes.
Knee-jerk?
And that doesn't, knee-jerk immediate outrage. And it's not to say that that's never warranted. Sometimes it's super warranted. But just one kind of reaction to every offense is not going to change somebody. We have a variety of different reactions depending on what Peridot does that's offensive. When Peridot says something offensive to Garnet, Garnet basically mutes her.
Yeah. She ties her to a fence post, dusts her hands off, and walks away.
And so Peridot doesn't get any satisfaction and gets to be like, when she offends Amethyst, Amethyst kind of cold shoulders her and gets a little passive aggressive, and she has to feel like she misses Amethyst. And then when she tries to make amends, Amethyst accepts the apology.
And when she offends Pearl, Pearl knocks out one of her teeth.
Way out of line by being super racist. Pearl punches her, and that was a really good thing to do in that situation.
Yes. But Stephen is a saint and approaches her with all the patience in the world in the hope that he can show her all of the things that she makes fun of and teach her to love them. That is also a valid approach to somebody who acts like a bigot if you have the energy to do that.
The show is not saying you all have to be Stevens just because Stevens the main character. And Garnet kind of becomes the mouthpiece disclaimer on that. She says, you have a lot more patience than most of us do. And that's nice, but we can't all do what you're doing. And there's that moment where Stephen finally gets fed up, like, I was so good to her. And it's okay if you try to be the Stephen and then you're done. I guess the main thing I'm saying is think about different approaches to responding to different bigots, because you never know when it's a Peridot who's just unaware how gay she is.
Yes. Peridot does come to love and treasure all of those things on Earth to the point where she's willing to risk her life
If you
to
don't have
defend
the
them.
spoons, at least support your Stevens who do. I used to be a Peridot. I was in Catholic school for 12 years.
No, you don't. Come back.
And yeah, we had religion class mandatory every day, and I got to learn about the homosexuals. And at any rate, I get to being 13 years old, and I'm sitting with my friends, and they're actually, you know, not following that line of thinking, and they're really, really supportive of the LGBT community, and they're talking about it, and I'm like, I guess I'm okay with gay people, but bisexuals are gross. They really need to figure their stuff out, and I'm bisexual. So I'm just saying, a lot of us start out as Peridots, and I try to remember that when I'm dealing with somebody engaged, how much outrage versus trying to educate them I have the energy to do.
Something I see in Peridot and have come to see in a lot of the rest of this show, more and more as it goes on. If you guys don't listen to the official podcast, especially when they're interviewing Rebecca Sugar, you should. She says so many valuable things, and one of them was talking about how when we don't learn about ourselves as kids, when we don't even learn what being queer is, then we just come to expect certain things from ourselves that we're never going to be. We come to expect things from other people that they're never going to be. And then when we become adults and learn that this stuff exists and learn that it might be okay to be that way, we have to unlearn everything we learned as children. And that is so messed up and so harmful. And it's so much more work than anybody should have to go through just to be happy with themselves. And like I said, very visible with Peridot, but it's there with everyone in this show, and I mean everyone. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, Lapis. Lapis is, I don't even know if I want to say allegory. Lapis is a story about abuse and its effects.
There's some allegory there, but mostly because they can't show things on kids' shows like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lapis Lazuli suffered abuse for years at the hands of those who should have trusted and supported her.
So Lapis was abused by Homeworld, but then the revolutionary liberal force that was supposed to help people like Lapis also was just like,
they came across her downtrodden form and were like, cool.
Some just fall through the cracks of the movement, and that's what they allowed to happen to Lapis, and of course she felt betrayed like that. I feel like Lapis might be, a couple of people have told me, really relatable to some people who are intersectionally between a family that's maybe, say, conservatively religious Muslim, but who also and has some homophobic beliefs, but who's also gay themselves and feels ousted by the mostly white Christian LGBT community who's Islamophobic.
Yeah.
So they
Basically,
want their faith and they want to be LGBT, and they can't really have a place in either of their communities.
they want a community, but no community that they should belong to has given them any reason to trust it. Lapis was physically and emotionally silenced for eons. She was able to see and hear everything, but unable to speak. If you think about that as a metaphor, it might start to seem pretty familiar to a lot of people. She not only went through all of that, but once she is finally freed by the only person to ever show her empathy, she is immediately entered into a toxic relationship with Jasper, which she sacrifices her own self to enter into.
There's, like, she's really powerful. She had an entire ocean.
She can move the entire ocean.
She could have taken Jasper out without fusing with Jasper, but she wanted to do something for Steven in a way that would punish herself and be familiar. And being trapped is what was familiar to Lapis.
Many of us in the LGBT plus spectrum do receive abuse from people who we should have trusted, our families, our partners, our friends. And yes, go ahead.
We like the narrative that LGBT relationships are always free and beautiful and loving. But you know what? Sometimes the abuse that we receive, we end up putting into our relationships. There are toxic, abusive LGBT relationships, and this is an exploration of how that happens and how somebody can crawl out of those toxic patterns. Lapis has been working really hard to get over her fear of intimacy and her impulse to just be in a toxic relationship.
Yeah, Stephen and eventually Peridot are the ones who start to pull her out of that, trying not to force her to get over what happened to her and just kind of let her be. Maybe sometimes to a fault, but at the same time, the way they treated her was a way she had never been treated. It was a way she needed to be.
But at a certain point, she started getting a bit too demanding of Peridot's emotional energy, and Peridot had to learn to say, no, I can't do the thing you're asking of me. And it was then up to Lapis to figure out, okay, do I want to be alone again, or do I want to go back? And she does go back and decides to face her fears, to be with these people who have been there for her so much.
Yeah, up until now, like a huge motif for Lapis has been the theme of freedom, of being free from her many different confines. And every time she finds that freedom, she winds up being terrified and not knowing where to go. Just like coming out, being free as yourself doesn't mean now that you're safe, that you have a home to go to. Sometimes it can be even more frightening to take that step. That doesn't mean that you won't find a group to belong to like Lapis did. And just because you've suffered a lot, experienced a lot of pain, and your life has sucked, that doesn't always mean that that's going to turn you into a bad person. Sometimes it can give you strength. It can make you able to stand up to Blue Diamond and just go, bitch, please. Anything else?
No, that was perfect. We have to end on that, right?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Jasper, on the other hand, one of the big differences between the Peridot and Lapis's is that the Jasper of our story does not believe she deserves better. Peridot and Lapis did. Peridot and Lapis, in different rates and in different ways, eventually fought for themselves to be in a better place, but Jasper truly hates herself and does not think she deserves better than where she is.
So she seems like a total villain at first, like the closest thing we actually have to a villain. When she first appears, she's just mean. She kicks the crap out of the crystal gems, insults everybody, and then gets her butt kicked and winds up dragged into the bottom of the ocean, and that seems like a good thing for a moment. But there's a lot more to her than that. And at her next appearance, we started to see that she was actually a perfect example of what she's supposed to be. Not a high-class gem, but a perfect version of her class of gem.
She has the capacity to go beyond the stigma of where she comes from. And she clings to that because she doesn't consider herself to have any worth other than what she can do to serve the people who validate the characteristics they like in her.
Yeah. Those beliefs that all gems who stand outside of the Diamond Authority must be purged are things that she truly holds dear. It might be the only thing she can hold on to because she knows that she was created on Earth, a place that she hates, a place where Pink Diamond was allegedly shattered and where rebellion took place. She has filthy origins that she wants to rid herself of.
Because she
does this by beating on the crystal gems.
When she starts exploring queerness, it is only through an abusive lens, and this is abuse that is mutual. It's back and forth. She abuses Lapis, and she appreciates being abused back by Lapis because she thinks she deserves punishment for being a filthy queer person.
Yeah, why don't you talk more about the metaphor, though?
What?
No, I mean, like, what it all means. What?
Well, it kind of reminds me of somebody who's completely indoctrinated and is secretly queer and then starts running a program like Focus on the Family and dedicates their life to fighting LGBT rights, and then it turns out that they have these horribly abusive, lopsided queer relationships on the side.
So like closeted Republicans.
But with beefy voices.
I would like to note that Jasper is better than any closeted Republican in existence.
Now, like, you can have sympathy for people like this because part of why they're behaving this way is because of deep pain coming from society, coming from a system. But the fact that they're aiding the system and hurting us means that we still have to try and prevent them from hurting us. Jasper getting bubbled is basically the best we can do for somebody who refuses to help themselves and has die-hard bent on hurting the rest of us along with them.
Bubbling Jasper also puts her story on hold. It is an incomplete story, and we'll definitely have more to say when she finally gets out of that bubble, because she definitely will.
And finds out who Steven is.
Yeah, that's going to be really awkward, right? Yep. Oh, sorry for punching you in the eye with my head, my diamond.
After Rose, I want to talk about business real quick.
There's a reason we only have her labeled as Rose.
She doesn't want to be called Pink Diamond anymore.
Pink Diamond is her dead name. You don't dead name somebody who has completely transitioned.
And we're not just pulling this out of our butts. We got this from trans people who were saying that they saw themselves in Rose's story, in her decision to change her form.
There were so many hot takes after the reveal about like, yeah, Pink Diamond was just a coward running away from everything and blah, 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 blah. And I'll be like, yes, she did do some things wrong. She did do some things that were short-sighted. She abused her power and didn't consider the ramifications, the universal ramifications across the galaxy. But changing her identity was a transition. It was validation.
Personal issue.
That itself was not running away. That was becoming who she was.
Who she felt more comfortable as. Yes, thank you. Very nice wig, right? Yeah.
And so there were a lot, both our trans friends and then a lot of really eloquent trans folks writing essays kind of hit back against that hot take about her just running away. She wasn't.
They also pointed out that if you include the blue on her shield, that she has all the colors of the trans flag on her, which is probably just a coincidence, but it doesn't hurt.
It does not hurt. Also, she does transition again into a human, a boy, Steven. So,
which is a little different because new memories, new person.
Yes. But still, she is completely, you cannot think of Rose without thinking of transition.
No, not at all. Definitely respect. And when we're talking about her as far as her relationship to the crystal gems goes, she was their ultimate ally. She was
their champion.
Yes, she was in a position of power higher than the rest of them. She could be their voice. She could fight for them the way no other gem could, the way they couldn't fight for themselves.
She might have been too good an ally because they relied on her.
They needed her for validation.
They staked part of their identity on her. Their identities were tied to her. And therefore, their self-actualization, they're totally coming to terms with themselves and standing on their identities, deciding their own identities, was somewhat stifled as long as she was around.
Yeah, when you've got something to lean on, you don't need to keep walking forward. Their growth basically stagnated. And you can see, like Natalie said, just how much they leaned on her. When they start finding out uncomfortable truth, they completely fall apart. Except for Pearl, who knew all along. She falls apart over other things.
But yeah, basically, it's not wrong for LGBT people to support each other, but she was propping up everyone in a very lopsided, asymmetrical manner.
It's also not wrong for us to rely on allies, to find that one strong person who gives us a voice and lean on them for a little bit.
And that's okay, but the ultimate goal for self-actualization is for that person to become someone that you support each other mutually. You're not just reliant on them to be okay with yourself. Rose also is polyamorous, although because of her position of power, people did not fully communicate their boundaries with her, and she would engage in relationships that some of her partners weren't comfortable with. And that's partially on her, that's partially on Pearl and Greg. It's on them. But it's still really interesting to see that it's not a negative entire depiction of a polyamorous person.
It's just part of the way she was. It hurt people sometimes, but it's not really portrayed as a bad thing, and that's important. Oh wait, you wanted to talk. We don't have a slide for Bismuth, but we do want to mention her. I really need to add the slide in. I mean, she's got rainbow hair. What a failure on my part, yeah.
She is stone butch.
Literally, get it? Because everybody's a rock. Yeah, okay.
No, but I think Bismuth is a great allegory for somebody who's super into the cause.
She is super into it.
Super into the cause.
She's into the cause. She's into her friends. She's into everything the group stands for.
She has a very radical vision of how to handle and approach the cause. And that's not treated by the show as a bad thing necessarily, but it explores more of what happens when two people who have the same cause, or two people in a group who have the same cause, have a different idea about how to approach it.
It's called infighting.
Infighting.
Infighting is bad.
Infighting is bad, you guys.
We already have enough enemies on the outside. We should all be fighting the straights and not each other. Hashtag not all straights, in case any of you were, okay.
And I do think it's interesting that even though there was that infighting, you know, Rose ultimately did take Bismuth's advice and went more radical by faking her own death, thinking, yeah, if Pink Diamond dies, that'll fix everything, right? And then that didn't go so well. I think it's really cool how Bismuth is like, yeah, I guess that idea didn't work, and she and Steven agreed to have a better dialogue. Instead of infighting, they're going to find some middle ground between her radicalism and Steven's, I want to just talk it out.
Well, Bismuth needed to get that anger out. She had been treated horribly and betrayed. She couldn't sit down and have that conversation.
Anger was so valid.
Yes. But once the anger got its outlet, she was able to sit down and talk, and they exemplify what two parties who seriously disagree can accomplish together.
And I do think Bismuth is possibly going to play a pretty huge role, because I don't think that Steven's Let's Talk to White Diamond is going to go over so great.
I don't think White Diamond talks to people anymore.
She just T-poses.
If I don't do this, who will? Yeah. Okay. We also like to talk about the off-colors. Yeah!
I kind of think that Lars is going to bring Bismuth as part of like a rescue crew.
Yeah, we're not here for theories. But
I just had to say that before we moved on.
Okay, it's a fun theory. Anyway, the off-colors are legit based off of a group of young LGBT individuals that Rebecca and Ian met when they went to an LGBT youth center. So this shit's gay. I just want, like I'm gonna keep on saying that in a different, just remember that.
And they're based upon the ideas that the kids were like, hey, can you explore this kind of intersexual idea that I'm dealing with or that my friend's dealing with? So yes, there are people who have physical disability.
Explore each of them individually.
And are also gay.
Rutile has what would be considered a physical disfigurement in the gem world, where they split off in the middle. They're like conjoined twins, and that freaks other gems out.
We've got Peridot, who might be analogous to neurodivergence, or...
She's a disabled sapphire.
Yeah.
She can only see the past.
Not to say that that lacks its uses, because sometimes she can explain why something happened when people are like, why didn't this work? She says how it didn't work, and then they can fix it.
We have Rhodonite, who's just a queer relationship that was kicked out of their home when they were found out. And they're kind of a nervous wreck, and you can't blame them.
She's kind of, you know, Ruby and Sapphire were like the prince and pauper relationship, but these two were both servant class. And so, you know, Sapphire was offered a hand. You're like, oh, I can salvage you, but these two were just kicked out.
Yeah. And we have Fluorite, who's a 6-gem fusion and is absolutely a symbol for a healthy polyamorous relationship.
Good communication all around. Everybody agrees. Boundaries are set. It's excellent.
And when you kind of think of it, she looks like a giant caterpillar and talks very slowly. When people first see her, they might be unnerved and think that's kind of freaky, but if they get to know her, they'll see that her just being the way she is actually pretty cool.
And really sweet.
And she's not going to make you join a 6-gem fusion, not unless you want to. So why are all of these attributes important to LGBT representation?
Because we are everywhere, and we are one of the most intersectional marginalized groups.
The other most intersectional marginalized group is people with disabilities.
Just because, you know, anybody can have a disability from any other marginalized group. So basically what we're getting at here is we're going to exist in every way, everywhere, whether people want us to or not, whether people know it or not. We might be hiding underground, we might be hiding things about ourselves, but we're there, so maybe knowing that can give us strength to come out a bit more.
That's right. And that's part of the thing that we're getting to see with them. They never saw any others like themselves. Just seeing another person like yourself being out can change your life.
They thought it was just the four. Well, I mean, fluoride's a lot.
She's a singular entity.
Yes, but they thought it was just them. And we see again that new, it might be a form of jade fusion in the most recent episode.
It was jade, yeah.
But she exclaims ecstatically, and that look on her face where she's like, I thought I was the only one.
No, she said, I knew I wasn't the only one.
Oh, right. Well, she was afraid she was because she never did that.
She was suddenly given the courage to fuse in public in front of the diamonds because she saw two other fusions like her. That's the kind of value that thing has. We gotta move on, though, to relationships, which are conveniently embodied in single characters. Because this comes at the end of the panel, we usually focus on the most important relationships in the show. So these guys are great. If you want to talk to us about them after the panel, please feel free. I love all of them. But first, we're going to talk about Pearl and Rose.
Okay, so, first of all, this was extremely requited, you guys.
Is anyone saying still that it was unrequited after that please don't ever stop thing? I didn't think so.
Did you notice how the framing there was exactly like when she and Greg first have her big talk?
The show is really good at artistic callbacks. Always keep your eyes open for them.
Yes, the framing, the lighting, the expression on Rose's face is exactly the same as the first time Rose and Greg danced and had that real conversation that Garnet dubbed fusion, because it was real communication. They're getting really real in that moment. Pearl is saying what she wants for herself, what she wants with Rose, and that's when they first start to fuse. They were really opening up, and Rose was into it.
Very much. This relationship shows what an empowering experience your first queer relationship can be when you've spent all your time alone and you finally find that person. It also shows what a huge heartbreak it can be when you lose that relationship.
And this was, you know, this was not something where, I don't think she fell out of love with Pearl. I think that she also fell in love with Greg, who could give her something that Pearl never could. Pearl was always going to be burdened with knowledge about Rose. Knowledge that made their relationship a little bit asymmetrical.
Not only that, but I mean, when she said that Greg could give Rose something that Pearl never could, you all probably thought babies.
That's another one of those things. But she loved that Greg didn't know anything about her previous.
Yes, but I'm talking about babies.
Yeah.
And how many a lesbian has lost a woman to a man who can give her babies.
Bisexual women have also lost women to men that can give their girlfriend babies.
And that really super hurts. Even if it was a valid decision on your ex's part, it just cuts you to your core. It's something you can never do for her, and it's something that she really wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, too heavy?
That happened to both of us.
Aww.
Thank you. Well, for me, it was just like it was over before high school was over. It was like, she made it clear that she wanted to go the Louisiana path. And I was like, all right.
Just sailing down that old Mississippi, huh?
I'm from Louisiana. Louisiana's very...
All right. All right, you know, the Mississippi really isn't straight and narrow. Yes, I just came up with that. So, like, we like to really focus on, like, the pain that Pearl and Rose go through, but we're seeing more and more of their beginnings and what a revolutionary relationship it was. And I just love the conversations they have in Now We're Only Falling Apart, was it? Mm-hmm. Where, as Pink Diamond, one of the first things that she says to Pearl in that episode is, could you imagine that building a colony would be this boring? And if you listen to the dialogue, she says, could you imagine, to Pearl over and over again, and Pearl's answers become more and more imaginative the more she's asked that, until she finally admits to Rose that she's been having her own thoughts. She's been imagining her own things, and it entails them being together. And go ahead.
And then they're together for about 6,000 years. And it's true that because Pearl is a bit codependent, that there was this lopsided element, but theirs was still a loving and largely good relationship. It fell apart because Pearl did not communicate her needs clearly enough.
And because Rose was kind of selfish.
Rose can be kind of selfish. And when a guy comes along that Rose likes just as much as Pearl, and also he can give her something that Pearl can't handle meeting somebody that is just as important as her. And that's why it breaks off.
I can't blame her.
Yeah, it's legit. They all had legit feelings.
I'm gonna swipe this way. Okay. Steven's relationship with everyone is the most important relationship in the show, even though it's not romantic. I'm sorry. Sorry, not sorry. Steven provides for all of his friends and family what Rose couldn't. He's the ally that they needed, because he's one of them. He doesn't stand above them, he stands with them. He needs them just as much as they need him. He's a kid. You all right? I need some too, please.
Oh,
thanks.
Go for it. I mean, Steven is growing, but they're growing together. There's not this power imbalance where one person needs the other person more. They're still growing together. They're remaining equally vulnerable to each other. And that makes them stronger together. This individualism that they have is not anti-community. The individualism that they celebrate in each other strengthens their community.
Like, I can't even say that he brings out the best in each of them. He shows them where the best parts of themselves are, and they learn how to bring it out themselves. They learn how to love themselves, appreciate what they contribute to the group and what they contribute to him. He teaches them that you are never done growing, even if you are a semi-immortal rock.
Everyone learns to give, share, create love, and support through their relationships. As gems help Steven to grow, they grow themselves. And if the gems are queer people who came out through rebellion and camaraderie, Steven is a new identity and generation born from what they created, who both looks to them for guidance and continues to validate their identities.
Isn't that lovely? And this is still a kids' show?
And you're saying kids' show, and that's because, like, a target demographic on paper is kids, but I think this is an everyone's show.
It is an everyone's show.
I think that this show does not assume kids are too stupid to understand things that will resonate with all ages.
Oh, no. It's absolutely an everyone's show. But when a network puts it on television and has faith that a certain group of people will watch it, it's kids.
So when we say kids show, we're talking about corporate branding more than what the show actually resonates with.
Did the word network get you? Yeah, I feel that. So Ruby and Sapphire are the happiest, healthiest romantic relationship in the whole show, and they are unabashedly gay every time they're on screen.
Again, this is a show that is branded as a kids show by evil executives who are afraid of conservatives. So,
and afraid of Russia, where this show airs, unfortunately. Or maybe fortunately. Yeah, how heavily edited?
Heavily edited.
Yeah, so don't underestimate how important that is. We have never seen representation like this. And don't underestimate the kind of fight that the people behind the show had to go through to get these things on screen. There are things that they can't tell us, but they've implied.
You should really listen to the podcast.
Like, and whenever you hear Rebecca give an interview, she's very quiet, and you can hardly hear the things she's saying. But when she starts talking about this stuff, she gets lit on fire, and she starts actually talking with some passion, and like you can tell how important it all is to her.
Like, there's this one moment where Sapphire's voice actress was the one being interviewed on the podcast, and she talked about how Rebecca was really excited about how she delivered a certain line because
during the wedding,
because it communicated "I love you," even though they were not allowed to write "I love you" in their vows.
They had to edit the characters' lines because they sounded too romantic during a wedding.
Have you noticed they've never said "I love you"?
So yeah, now that we're all in the like, this is super important phase of things.
I just want you to understand the level of censorship that's put down, even on what we got.
It's easy to start taking it for granted after we've gotten this far.
She had to fight to get us what we got.
Yep. Networks be assholes. And then they'll even say stuff like, oh, the network was so good and worked with me. They have to say that. Anyway.
The next tab is...
What? Oh, where we get personal?
Yeah,
okay.
Personal.
Well, we asked everybody if they relate to a certain Steven Universe character, and I really relate to Ruby a lot. She just seems like me animated sometimes. It's a little weird, but it's I'm getting nervous now.
No, it's okay.
You got this.
Thank you.
You don't have to be nervous because everyone loves hearing you say this.
Well, I really relate to her personality, her overabundance of emotion, and the way she just came up thinking that she was no good on her own. Like, I don't think that because I am one of many identical clones who is created to be a foot soldier and sent out to die. I think that for different reasons, like more actual human reasons, but I did wind up thinking that my existence doesn't matter, or it doesn't matter as much as hers, and things like that. And, you know, finding a relationship that meant as much to me as mine with Natalie does, it makes you think, like, well, do I need this too much? And I don't know, that conversation she had with Steven on that rock where she was just like...
In the cowboy hat?
In the cowboy hat.
Okay.
Where it's not bad that you miss that person, that you want to be with that person, that they mean that much to you. It's your own decision. That meant a lot to me. It gave me a lot of validation, and I'm really rambling. Also, I have a nasty temper. And screaming at one butterfly thing was one of the most relatable things I'd ever seen on a television screen.
It's that hyper-focusing, right?
Yes. Yes.
I really loved that you got that moment where, like, my wife is a shy extrovert. Like, we're presenting now, like, you've worked really hard to get to where you can present, but you always operate best with people around. Like, even when Ruby was like, I'm going on my own, she had an entourage.
Yeah.
Ruby is a shy extrovert. She is enlivened by being with other people, and you're the same. And it's okay that you explore yourself, but you're also happier being with people.
Yes. And there's nothing wrong with that.
And our society often acts like extroverts who like to be with people but are shy are just needy.
Also,
No.
I'm really, really super gay, and I can't hide it, ever. Like, no. Okay, it's your turn.
Okay. I mentioned that I was brought up at Catholic school. That implies private school. Louisiana. I'm a white girl going to private Catholic school in Louisiana. I had an extremely privileged upbringing. I generally was top of my class. I was expected to have this sort of glimmering future of very straight professional excellence. And
then you met that New York Jew.
And then I met that New York Jew. When I was 19, I came out to my family, and their response was, "Oh, you're not bi, you're confused, get rid of her, you're okay, come back." I was, my aunt and uncle made some photocopies of Bible passages with the important parts highlighted and sent me a DVD with this simpering lady with the biggest hair. And it was just information I might not have heard before. Basically, it was just like Blue Diamond being like, this sapphire is salvageable, but we're going to destroy that ruby. I was offered a chance to recloset myself, and I didn't. I went to New York. And while my separation was not nearly as life-threateningly dire and permanent.
We didn't jump off an airship. Yeah, no.
There's, like I said, a giant emotional rift and physical distance that is slowly being filled with sand. Like little cups of sand.
One grain at a time.
But that was really relatable. And again, like telling you that you're equal, you're super worth it, you're amazing, you took me on a path I never anticipated, and I've become happier and more interesting person in reaction to you. I also have diagnosed OCD and ADHD, and that means that I see so many futures. I see so many possibilities. I see all these butterflies. I spend so much time anticipating things that sometimes I get really overwhelmed. That scene in Mindful Education where Sapphire gets overwhelmed was like watching my autobiography in its really pretty metaphor. And while I've learned lots of coping mechanisms, one of the old ones that wasn't so great was pure logical distance. But that's lonely. It's not healthy. Being with Judith makes a lot more things uncertain sometimes. I don't know if we'll be able to have a kid so easily. I don't know as many things about how many rights we're going to have if we ever wanted to move to another state. Things are harder, but things are more alive. And even though I have to independently manage my OCD, it's okay that there's somebody who's supporting me. I have to make the choice to take her hand instead of burying myself in my fears. But it's still a good choice to take her hand. Basically, seeing this depiction of two neurodivergent little gays having a healthy relationship, that neurodivergent people who are called mentally ill, people who are called messed up, can have a healthy, loving relationship. I like seeing this healthy, loving relationship that's lasted so long too, with all of those problems, slowly working through them, that being a beautiful thing, that being something to aspire to, that being something that goes in the face of what my parents said, that being something that kids can look at, that people can actually look up to a relationship like ours, that we can be proud of. Seeing that on a kids show, nationally airing, blew my mind. And I loved how in their recent arc, they reaffirmed that Sapphire felt like she went back into that everything should have been up to me when she found out about Rose. She went back into that, uh-oh, did I do all of this? Did I lose everything for nothing? And then she realizes, no, I'm still self-directed. We're self-directed. We change each other's lives. We got married 4 years ago, and our vows were so similar to what was written down in the vows on the show. And so, yeah, this show is a big deal. Maybe not everything in this is perfect representation for everyone, but gosh, I'm glad it exists because it really helped us feel really validated.
And that last episode we watched,
and we can't be alone.
Yeah, that last episode we watched where Ruby and Sapphire fuse in front of Yellow and Blue Diamond and Pink and White Diamond's robot, and then Pearl and Amethyst fuse in front of them too, and then those two Jades just randomly fuse, and it just shows that all you need is to see somebody like you standing out there and being proud of themselves. That's something that I hope we can give to younger people ourselves when they see us walking down the street holding hands. And this quote from Garnet is something that I think is really coming to full force in the show, a real big theme of it, just saying, look at you, love freedom, it's universal. You all prove it every moment you live as yourselves, and you can show everyone.
And I love it when she also says, we are everywhere, because we are. If this means this much to me, I know it means this much to so many other people, and I'm so glad this show exists. Thank you for coming to Gay Space Rock.
Just swipe. Those are our Twitters. We've abandoned Tumblr because it's in its death throes. And we have Gay Breakfast at Instagram right now. We have a podcast that updates irregularly. Feel free to take photos. I'll hold on this for a moment. Okay, and also, you are raising your hand, sir.
Yes, I'm so glad that you mentioned the podcast. For like a third or fourth time, I watched for this podcast. It's really amazing. But do you know of Rebecca Sugar's interview on the podcast Query?
Yes.
Because I love the comedian Amethyst, which is a lesbian LA-based comedian. She's really great. The podcast Query interviews people like Rebecca Sugar about their identity experiences. And everyone should listen to that episode with Rebecca Sugar. They had to retape the episode because Rebecca Sugar cried so much the first time they tried to retape it. She tried to get really positive.
Yeah, I agree. The podcast is called Query, and there is an episode where Rebecca Sugar is interviewed. And just remember, her identity is something she kept under wraps for a very long time, too. So it's an emotional experience for her to talk about it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for making sure to recommend that where everyone could hear it, because that is definitely worth listening to. I just want to mention is like, we're able to afford doing panels like this because we also sell our art. We have pins for sale. We have prints for sale.
The marketplace is currently open, but we're not.
We can walk you to the marketplace and take your money and give you gay stuff.
Okay.
But like everything you see taped up here and all these pins on the screen, feel free to take a photo. We're gonna run. I'm selling the samples of the pins right now. We have like enough left to make anybody happy, but we're eventually gonna kickstart it for a larger batch.
And if there's any opinions you want us to talk about with Steven Universe, I always love talking about the show. You can come up and talk to us, unless you have horrible opinions and say I hate gay people or something like that and get out of my face. But you wouldn't do that, right? Right? Okay, good. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you.